That same house you don't want to be in. That same, God said, I'll take you back to that. Sometimes we ask God, why would you bring me back to this same place? Because God said, I'm ordering your steps. And when I order your steps, I'll take you back in the same chaotic situation, straighten that thing out, and turn the chaos into peace. Because I'm ordering your steps. So he says, first of all, when God orders your steps, watch this, your footsteps are favored. But look at verse 24. I like this because even though God is ordering your steps, watch what he says. He says, sometimes you might fall. Somebody say, wow, how can I? Look at verse 24. Though he do what? Though he fall. Though I stumble. Now, I shared this morning. When God blesses, the devil starts what? Messing. But God allows the devil to mess because God is trying to test us. So the blessed brings mess in order to test. Got that? The blessing brings the messing in order to test us. Yeah. It's a blessing from God, messing from the devil. But God said, I allow that because I'm trying to test you. So God says, watch what David said. Though he fall. Because God is ordering my steps. First of all, my footsteps are favored. And even through favor, let me help somebody. Because you think when God favors me, I'll never fall. I'll never make no mistakes because I got favor upon my life. But let me explain something to you. When you are favored, the fall sometimes is a part of the favoring. Because it's the fall that sometimes will make you a better person. It's the fall that sometimes will wake you up. It's the fall that sometimes will put you on a different path. Watch this. He says, though he fall. Watch this. Because he's ordered my steps, my fall won't be fatal. Yeah, it ain't fatal. I don't mind falling if it ain't fatal. Which means that I can fall, but I'm going to get up again. And when God is ordering your steps, though you fall, it ain't going to be fatal. You know why? Because God still has his hands on you. Look what he said. Verse 24. Though he fall, he shall not what? Be utterly cast down, which means your fall won't be fatal or final. You're going to get up again. You might trip, you might stumble, even though you're favored, even though, yeah, you've been blessed. Guess what? We're all capable of falling. But thanks be to God that God is directing my path. And because God is ordering my steps, I shall get up again. You shall get. Watch this. He says he's holding you with his hand, upholds us, which means that God has his hands under us. When I was a little boy, we sang a song, he's got the whole world in his hand. And we used to sing that song. I mean, it was a cute little song. But I don't believe we really understood how powerful that song is. He's got the whole world in his hand. He's got mama and daddy, sister and brother in his hand. You can't appreciate that when you're young. But when you get older and you start falling sometime, you can appreciate the fact that God still got me in his hands. Has anybody ever fallen and said, "Oh, I thank God that I was still in his hands"? The reason that I've fallen, but yet I was able to get up is because I was still in his hands. The reason I've fallen, listen, God favored me. I've been walking, but yet I stumbled and fell. Falling is a part of life. Ain't nothing wrong with falling. As long as you know that your fall is not fatal or final, but that God still has his hands on you. Watch this. He says this. He says this. He says, listen, my fall's not final because God has his hands upon me. So David says something else in verse 25. He says, now my steps are ordered. They're ordered by God. I'm godly. Listen, the steps of a good man. He's comparing, contrasting the life of the godly and the ungodly. He says, listen, don't sweat the evildoers. He said they're soon going to be cut off. He said, you trust God. You commit yourself, delight yourself upon him, and allow God, verse 23, to order your steps. And when he orders your steps, he says, watch this, your steps are favored. He says you'll fall. You might fall, even though you've been favored. You're going to fall, but they're not fatal. But then he says, because God is ordering your steps, he says you will not, your future will not be forsaken. Listen at what he says. I have been young, but now I'm old. Now think about it. David, twice in his life, had been a fugitive. He's had turbulent days over and over, but they were now over. And he says, through all I've been through, I've never seen the righteous forsaken. In other words, through all the stuff I've been through, God has been right there for me. Isn't that awesome? That's his testimony. He said, I once was young. He said, but now I'm old. In spite of everything that I've gone through, I was running from Saul, who was trying to kill me, but yet God brought me out. I wonder if there's anybody who has that testimony today who can look back over your life and say, after all the stuff I've been through, it was God who brought me because he ordered my steps. He said, listen, watch this. No, he has not forgotten. He said, nor my seed begging bread. He said, the Lord has not, I've been young, now I'm old. I have not seen the righteous forsaken. Don't you know that the Lord says, I'll never leave you, nor will I forsake you. David says, listen, if you're righteous, if you're godly, stick with God. Let God continue to order your steps, because when God orders your steps, not only are your footsteps are favored and your fall won't be fatal. He says, but your future will not be forsaken. God gonna always have you covered, regardless of how things look. Your seed, listen, even your children gonna be covered. He says, I have not seen the righteous forsaken, nor my seed begging bread, because God has me covered. And I want to say this as I leave you. If you stick with God, watch God stick with you. If you stick with God, God will stick with you. David said, listen, let God order your steps. And I asked this question this morning. Who's ordering your steps? Is God directing your path? See, because when God orders your steps, he knows the path we ought to take. That's why David says in the 23rd Psalm, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restored my soul. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. The rod and the staff, they comfort me. Pass the table before me, presence of my enemies. Anoints my head with oil, cup runneth. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. He said, it's the Lord in 27 Psalm that's my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Whom shall I be afraid? Hallelujah. When my enemies and my foes come upon me to eat up my flesh, they gonna stumble and they are going to fall, because he said it's the Lord